Ralph Shug Jordan became Auburn's head football coach in 1951. During the quarter century which followed, the Tigers reached their greatest heights, winning the national championship in 1957 after a 10-0 season. Perhaps Auburn's greatest years under Coach Jordan were the Sullivan and Beasley years of the late 60s and early 70s. With Sullivan throwing and Beasley catching, there were high-scoring victories over Alabama in 69 and 70, and Pat Sullivan's Heisman Award in 1971. In 1955, WSFA TV and Coach Jordan began the first football playback program in the Southeast. In those early years, Leroy Paul and Coach Jordan held forth on Sunday afternoons. It was my privilege to assist Coach Jordan on the program for his last 13 years as head coach, and he gave me that nickname, "You're So Right, Carl."
And never giving up. That was the feeling that permeated the dressing room prior to the game, during the half. It was it's one that I'll remember forever, I'll tell you that.
In April 1975, at a hastily called news conference, Coach Jordan announced his retirement.
The magic number 25, 25 years as the head coach at Auburn has always been a magic number to me, and some of my closest personal friends realize that that was a magic number. And to even make it sound longer, I might say a quarter of a century. Well, that will be fulfilled with the good Lord willing this fall.
His successor, Doug Barfield, expressed the feeling of many Auburn fans for the man he succeeded.
Trustees to succeed a man like Coach Jordan, I'll tell you, to me, he's Auburn. He's everything that Auburn has ever stood for, and that's the main reason I came to Auburn, was because of him and the football tradition that he had established at Auburn University.
You're so right, Carl.
Always articulate and witty, there was a busy speaking schedule in retirement, until health reasons curtailed such activity last year. Last fall, in one of his final public appearances, we reminisced.
I remember some we won and some we lost. I don't think it would be a one-sided situation. Of course, you have to go back to the beginning, and there were 25 afternoons that I stood on the sideline and watched an Auburn, Alabama game.
Suffering from acute leukemia and chronic heart failure, Ralph Shug Jordan died at his Auburn, Alabama home early this morning.
Rowe has fought extradition from Georgia since a Lowndes County grand jury indicted him in 1978 for the murder. He came to Montgomery to testify for his lawyer's move to permanently block Alabama from prosecuting him. Several witnesses, including FBI agent Neil Shanahan, claimed they understood that Rowe had immunity only as long as Richmond Flowers were Attorney General. Rowe says Flowers gave him complete and total immunity with no limitations. He claims he got immunity when he agreed to testify in the murder trials of former Ku Klux Klansmen convicted of killing Mrs. Liuzzo. Rowe testified that he was in the car when the others shot Mrs. Liuzzo, but that he never fired his gun. Rowe also contradicted testimony by Birmingham policeman Lamont Coleman, who said that Rowe called him after the murder and told him that he had killed Mrs. Liuzzo so he wouldn't blow his cover as a Klansman. Rowe says that conversation never took place, that he never made any such statement, and that he had seen Coleman participating in Klan violence against blacks a year earlier. Coleman denied having been a member of the KKK. Lawyers for both sides have 10 days to file briefs on the case. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Mrs. Gunter, appearing before an interim legislative committee studying the management of state funds, says employers are now allowed to hold collected income taxes until the end of the month following each quarter of collections. She wants the employers, especially those with large dollar amounts of withholdings, to send the collected income tax money to the state within 3 banking days after they are collected from employees. Mrs. Gunter anticipates the state would receive a one-time windfall of additional money amounting to around $50 million. The state treasurer says only recently has state money earned substantial amounts of interest in banks around the state. She believes all state money should get some sort of return. The interim panel is concerned about some of the federal grant money received by the state. Representative Walter Owens says the state is guilty of not looking close enough at the matching formula. He says it's fine when the formula is 20 to 80 with the feds paying the large amount, but then the formula is just about turned around. An interim committee formed to consider the makeup of the Public Service Commission has elected Senator John Teague as its chairman. The committee plans to get into an in-depth study when it meets July the 25th. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Anybody, and others affect a few people, and I feel like my responsibility to. We need to encourage more local support in this plan, and also more state support. So I'd see such as increased ad valorem taxes, for example, could very well add stability to our plan. And we have the lowest ad valorem taxes of any state in the nation, so I feel like that would not hurt like some other taxes. We can not tax our people in more sales tax and income taxes. That's just not reasonable in my opinion.
The sign outside the Montgomery YWCO on Perry Street opens the Barracuda's success story. Inside, the team works out twice daily, from 6:15 to 8 in the morning and from 5 to 7 at night. The swimmers lift weights for 40 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to build up muscle strength. Lap after lap, mile after mile, the swimmers glide through the water under the watchful eye of Coach Warren Holliday.
Right now they're pulling, and that just helps their legs float up while they're not kicking. They're concentrating on their arms right now.
What is the clock used for, Warren?
Okay, that's a pace clock, and we have them go an interval system of workout in which they go short bouts of exercise on a given time span to give them rest and to keep them appraised as to how fast they're going within each group of exercise. They may do 10 100s on a given interval, and they would know how fast they go on each 100.
The Barracudas are chartered by the Amateur Athletic Union, which offers the highest level of competitive swimming besides that offered by the nation's colleges and universities. The AAU sponsors the Junior and Senior National Swimming Championships and the United States Olympic Trials. Olympics, the mere mention of the word draws reaction from Holliday.
We've got some very talented people on this team, and in 1984 you might see somebody from Montgomery wearing the Stars and Stripes.
I guess if they're there, the parents will be there. This is a very parent-organized thing you got here.
Yes, it is very parent-organized and parent-sponsored, and the parents and the whole family get together for swim meets and really go after it, have a good time.
And those with health problems endangered by the intense heat. Continued service and comprehensive and enforceable among citizens of this state of continued service and needed relief throughout. The adoption of this measure will facilitate its enforcement. The order so signed is that meeting is adjourned.
Representative Tom Bevel landed at Fort Toulouse as part of a helicopter survey of the Coosa River Navigation Project, which includes plans to widen the waterway so that it's navigable from Gadsden to Mobile. Apart from that is a campaign to stop the Coosa River's erosion of the foundation of Fort Toulouse, a French fort built on the Coosa some 250 years ago. The House of Representatives has already appropriated $1 million to stop the erosion, and the bill is pending in the Senate. Bevel is optimistic despite recent budget cuts.
We're taking our share of the cuts because we're certainly in support of balancing the budget, and we have balanced the 1981 budget, and I hope we can keep it balanced. And so all of these projects will have to take their share of the cuts, but This money is already appropriated, you know, for here by the House. And I don't anticipate any problem because I think time is of the essence, especially having been here and seen this.
One proposal is to haul in rocks and boulders to protect the banks from further erosion. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. Speaking to the Montgomery Optimist, Camp outlined several basic goals which he plans to implement if elected. First, he says the PSC needs to regain its credibility and trust with the public. He says this can be done by opening the commission to the press and general public.
If there's some document, some rate increase request, whatever, there's no need to be ashamed of it. Open it up and let the people see it. Give them an explanation of what is happening.
Camp says the second objective deals with the need for more competent staff members. He says the PSC needs people with professional training who know how to deal with representatives of utility companies. Camp says his third objective is to work toward making sure that customers receive reliable utility service at the least possible prices. He says he'll vote against rate increases unless they're absolutely essential for continued service. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Appearing before a select interim legislative committee on juvenile justice, George Pfeiffer says special funding and revenue sharing money from the governor has prevented his department from going under. Pfeiffer says local funding for youth services is almost non-existent. He says local communities must develop and support local programs for youth in trouble. The communities must assume the responsibility of their youth because the Department of Youth Services can't be all things to all people. Pfeiffer says his department lost $300,000 due to proration this year, and next year's budget of $6.5 million is $1 million less than this year. Pfeiffer says youth services needs a maximum security facility. A bond issue for schools 3 years ago gave the department $500,000, but it needs $250,000 more to build a 24-bed facility. Youth Services is the first of a number of juvenile justice system departments scheduled to appear before the interim legislative panel. A report on needs will be made to the 1981 legislature. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
The anonymous source stated that certain irregularities. As we have found the setup to be, the Monday Morning Quarterback Club here in Birmingham, through the Crippled Children's Hospital, donates money to the Alabama Special Olympics in the Jefferson County area. The Monday Morning Quarterback is really the fundraising arm to feed money for retarded children through Alabama Special Olympics. They have contributed over the last 2.5, 3 years, almost $40,000 by raising money for the handicapped and retarded. We found that Sharman was not only embezzling the solicited money, but monies that he had put in that account himself through another program called Sports Medicine. It was the one bank account that we have traced money to over a 3-year period of time had numerous deposits made to it. Every deposit was a cash deposit.
This was the scene at Maxwell some 7.5 years ago when Vietnam POWs were reunited with America and their families at the Homecoming Center. Today, Alabamians again gathered at the Air Force Base to pay tribute to the thousands of American soldiers who were taken prisoner or classified as missing in action during 4 major wars. The colorful ceremony was a joint effort by military personnel from Maxwell and Gunter Air Force Station. Colonel William D. Palmer told those present that America owes a great debt to the many servicemen who lost their freedom while fighting for the freedom of others.
While as a nation, we can never repay that sacrifice, we can, we must, we will remember.
A formal retreat ceremony, complete with the lowering of the American flag and an aerial display by Alabama's Air National Guard, honored the former POWs and MIAs. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
God, whose mercies cannot be numbered, who liveth and reigneth with thee and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever.
The purpose of the demonstration is to provide training for aviators and to give the public a chance to see some of the Army's latest equipment. During the 45-minute show, Army personnel explained each maneuver, the capabilities of each helicopter, and the ammunition it carried. The aircraft ranged from the OH-58 to the Army's current attack helicopter, the AH-1 Cobra. Pilots flying the OH-58 used what's known as the nap of the earth technique. This involves flying close to the ground and using highly vegetated areas to mask the helicopter's position from the enemy. The importance of concepts like this one became apparent to Army officials during the 1972 Vietnam conflict, when the North Vietnamese introduced surface-to-air heat-seeking missiles and increased their anti-aircraft capabilities. The helicopters also used some very effective ammunition, like the anti-armor missiles, which can easily hit a target that's 2 miles away, and the tow missile, which is capable of piercing the exterior of a tank. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The rain and cooler temperatures are a much welcome sight for the Alabama poultry producers who have lost millions of dollars worth of chickens and eggs within the past 2 weeks of 100+ degree readings.
We've had 1 million broilers and about 500,000 hens that have been lost through about the middle of the week. But fortunately, we've had these showers and cooler days down to about 95 degrees has helped tremendously. And we're very thankful for the showers because the loss was going to be pretty bad and affect the consumer's pocketbook.
Sylvester, whose company has lost 35,000 broilers so far, says this year is unlike any he's ever seen.
I've been in the poultry business 37 years, and I have never experienced this bad a heat problem. We have had some heat losses in the summertime, but never this bad before.
Alabama, which is the third largest poultry producing state in the U.S., is only one of several states that has suffered such large poultry losses because of the heat wave. Poultry experts are predicting a price increase of between 6 and 7 cents a pound at the supermarket within the next few weeks. One producer says as a result of the great losses, broiler prices will go higher than the general public has ever known. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
It indicates that he's got some real problems. here now.
For registration to start on
Did he?
Monday. Yeah,
Did he?
did.
I don't know what would cause a person to do that. If he's not doing his job, then he doesn't deserve his pay. I'm doing mine. I was elected to serve the people of the state of Alabama in the Senate, and I frankly don't have to back up to get my pay because I've got about a 96% voting record, and if he's got some concern about the fact that he might not be doing his job and doesn't deserve his pay for that, then he ought not accept it. But I'm doing my job and getting paid for what I'm doing, and am accepting it, and we'll continue to do it. Probably will after 80.
To start the YMCA football season for the fall. We have all the kids between the ages of 6 and 12 down here. We also have all the local coaches helping us and several of the college and pro players like Charlie and Woody Trotman from Auburn, Brian Braggs from University of Alabama, Mike Washington from Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Collins down here from the Auburn University and Miami Dolphins. We just thought it'd be a good chance for the kids to come out and meet these pro and college players and also to meet the local coaches, and they've brought several of the high school seniors with them to get some instruction in the fundamentals of football and get ready for this year's football season. Each of the coaches and pro and college players have been in charge of their own groups, and they've done an outstanding job with that.
Representatives of the host nation, the Soviet team, marched in last. The squad's 560 members marched behind the only Soviet flag in evidence on this day, that a result of a Kalanin-inspired attempt to depoliticize the first Olympic Games ever held behind the Iron Curtain. In all, 10 of 15 NATO nations took part today, 5 without government support. The lone American flag was brought into the stadium and hoisted into view by 2 American tourists. It was greeted by slight applause, and no effort was made by officials to inhibit what was the only pro-American rally of the day. As president of the Moscow Olympic Organizing Committee, Ignatiy Novikov greeted all visitors, then introduced Lord Kalanin. The president of the IOC, who recently sniped at President Carter's boycott decision, varied from tradition by injecting a political note into his welcoming remarks.
I would like to welcome all the athletes and officials here today, especially those who've shown their complete independence to travel to compete, despite many pressures placed on them.
Leonid Brezhnev followed Kalenin to the rostrum to speak the official words. I declare open the Olympic Games of 1980, celebrating the 22nd Olympiad of the modern era. Cued by Brezhnev's words, the Olympic flag was then brought into Lenin Stadium, where it will fly throughout the 16 days of competition. The flag was raised and shortly followed by the release of 22 doves, symbolizing the 22nd Olympiad. The official Olympic flag, which has lived in one Olympic host city then the next since 1920, was then presented to Vladimir Promislov, the mayor of Moscow. Due to the Canadian boycott of these games, the flag was handed over by two young torchbearers instead of Montreal Mayor Jean Drapeau. Atop a floating platform borne by human soldiers, Soviet basketball star Sergei Belov took the flame on its last leg to the top of Lenin Stadium, there to ignite the torch that will burn throughout the games.
You'll like this one. On Talk About this morning, a domino theory, not the communist one, the one they practice in Alabama. Here's Kenley Jones from Andalusia, Alabama.
It may come as a surprise to some, but there are places in this country where people still play dominoes instead of just setting them up to knock them down. There's almost always a game or two going on beneath the Chinaberry tree at Bess's Crossroads store in Coffee County, Alabama. The same is true in the nearby town of Opp, in the basement of a vacant church where the Rocking Chair Club meets to play. Although some of the club members are retired, there is nothing retiring about the way they play dominoes or chew tobacco.
We've got beat, I reckon.
Ira Hammett is a 69-year-old farmer who has been playing dominoes for most of his life. On this particular day, he was sharpening his skills for an attempt to win the annual World Championship Domino Tournament, which is held each July in Andalusia, Alabama.
Play dominoes.
The tournament began in 1976 as a bicentennial project for the local Rotary Club, with 80 participants and $350 in prize money. This year, more than 1,200 players competed for $20,000 in prizes. Dr. Charles Tomberlin, who is given credit for organizing the tournament, said he has been surprised at its widespread appeal.
We knew that some people played, but we did not know. It now appears that there are millions of people across the country that play dominoes.
Participants came from as far away as California this year. Altogether, there were 10 states represented. There is a children's division in the tournament. One of the youngest players, 6-year-old Jennifer Stewart, said she has trouble sometimes counting the spots on the dominoes. 93-year-old James Sims, the oldest player, said the same thing. He said it's just not as easy for him to keep count as it was 10 years ago. Ira Hammett did not win the tournament this year, although he did reach the semifinals in the singles competition, the best he's ever done.
I enjoy playing, and I get a big kick, and I beat you, and I hate that never to lose, but I lose a lot of games. I lost a lot of games.
People take their dominoes pretty serious around here, don't they?
Oh, they take it serious. They sure do.
As a matter of fact, while the final games were being played to determine the winners, Ira Hammett was on the sidelines getting ready for next year. First place in the tournament this year was won by Ronnie Anglin, a 29-year-old truck driver from Baldwin, Mississippi. He won $2,000 and 2 trophies.
But the winners here won more than cash prizes and trophies. They won bragging rights for a whole year about how well they laid those dominoes down. And for the losers, well, there's that other domino theory. For today, Kenley Jones, NBC News, Andalusia, Alabama.
Next up, we're going to get into the subject of how to avoid probate. Tom is going to have a talk with an author who really stirred things up in this area with a book about how to make sure your heirs are not ripped off. He made a lot of lawyers mad.
About 4 million young men will begin registering tomorrow at their local post office. Public service announcements like these are being used to encourage registration.
Being an adult. And right now, registering with the Selective Service is part of that responsibility. Hey, I don't want to see a draft. Besides, that would take an act of Congress. But I believe in case of emergency, our country needs to be prepared with a backup to our armed forces. Being prepared. That's what registration is all about.
If you're a young man born in 1960 or 61, register on your day.
Young men born in 1960 must register this week. followed next week by those born in 1961. To avoid long lines, the government is asking people to sign up on different days according to the month in which they were born. Those born in 1962 will have to register next January. After that, each male must register when he reaches his 18th birthday. The only young men not required to register are those on active duty in the armed forces or at military academies and non-immigrant aliens. Registrants must present identification and fill out a card giving their name, sex, date of birth, social security number, current address, permanent address, and current telephone number. There are no draft cards. About 90 days after the registrant fills out the information card, he will receive a letter from the Selective Service System confirming he has signed up and making it official. Failure to sign up is considered a felony, which carries a $10,000 fine and a 5-year jail sentence. A ruling against the registration by a 3-judge panel in Philadelphia was stayed yesterday by Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
We plan to work ourselves to the bone the next 4 months. It's going to take hard work. I've had, just since this morning, I guess a dozen or more calls from people across the city of Montgomery and even across the state that have offered their support. I might add that more than half of these people I know voted for Mr. Carter last time. They were good Democrats that were ready for a change. They've had 4 years of that change, and they're ready to make a change again and get back with some sensible approaches toward government and getting our country back on its feet again. And built, well, of course, the word passed through the halls and through the aisles that it was Bush, and of course with that the entire Alabama delegation went absolutely crazy along with the rest of the convention. I think, so far as Alabama is concerned, we couldn't have two finer men representing the ticket.
In just 25 years, just June. We think that the Republican president would immediately attempt to remove the grain embargo. We keep hoping that the Democratic administration will do that. We've made this recommendation several times consistently to them and to the president personally. And for some reason they delay in doing this. But we do think the Republican administration would immediately move to remove the grain embargo, and we could begin to hopefully try to regain the market we lost there.
The proposed curbside collection system only involves garbage pickup. Montgomery's League of Women Voters say the proposal should also include ways of converting the city's garbage into energy and fuel. The members say this could best be developed through a feasibility study conducted by the Environmental Protection Agency at no cost to the city. But Mayor Emery Farmer says he doesn't want to tie the two issues together.
Well, I say that we're talking about two different subjects. First of all, the one we're talking about is a way to improve the efficiency in our trash and garbage pickup. And that's what I'm primarily concerned with my proposal about the new system. Now, the conservation and the conversion and so forth is an idea, in my opinion, whose time has not come for a city the size of Montgomery.
He says the plan would work better in a larger city like Birmingham or Atlanta.
There are operational recycling programs going on across the country in cities with as few people as several thousand.
The mayor says another problem is that recycling would require area residents to divide their garbage into categories, and says this is an inconvenience which he doesn't think Montgomeryans are ready for. Mayor Farmer says he feels the council will give him the go-ahead this Tuesday to implement the program as is. But in the meantime, the League of Women Voters plans to continue to try to convince the council that some type of conservation method should be developed. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Here in Alabama.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing, that the people in Alabama who were so
I've been back home probably more than any sitting senator in the history of the state, other than perhaps my colleague, Hal Hepton. He's been back home about as much. The things that I've done in promoting alcohol fuels and an energy package, working for the farmer, the small business interest, working to balance the budget and to do things to stimulate this economy of ours in the home building industry, steel, autos, and otherwise to get us back on the right track in this country. And the votes that I've cast to increase military spending are all votes that I was asked to cast by the broad majority of the people of this state. So I would say that what I've tried to do is to represent people, and I call that good representation. My opponents during the political campaign are probably going to try to label it all kinds of things. I don't pay much attention to that.
Yeah, they also say that you and Howell Heflin aren't voting alike. Is that true?
Well, that's fairly inaccurate. I don't know where they got that. We vote together about, or have, on major issues about 87% of the time. So that's just an inaccurate statement. Now, we have disagreed, but we are going to. If you would have people who voted alike all the time, you wouldn't need but one senator.
Sieb was indicted in May on a charge that he lied to the grand jury when he testified that he had not given anything of value to any Public Service Commission employee. Since his indictment, he has fought against extradition that included an unsuccessful attempt to force District Attorney Jimmy Evans to appear at his extradition hearing in Louisiana. However, his request was rejected by the court here in Montgomery. Sieb was the fourth person indicted by the grand jury since the Public Service Commission investigation began in January. According to PSC records, he was paid $16,000 by the commission last year for testimony as an expert witness in a South Central Bell Telephone Company rape case. Sieb won a stay order from the Louisiana Supreme Court on July 3rd, stopping his extradition to Alabama. However, Richard Jordan, Sieb's attorney, says Sieb contends he is innocent of charges filed against him and returned to Alabama to prove his innocence. He was to appear before Circuit Judge Randall Thomas this morning for arraignment, but Sieb's attorney requested a continuance in the case because Sieb could not appear because of business commitments. Jordan says he expects a new arraignment date to be set within the next 2 to 3 weeks. From the Montgomery County Courthouse, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
I understand that hearing, you've already been invited. Will y'all bring us up to date with the investigation?
You placed in our firm in selecting us to do this work for you. And my partner, Charles Humphreys, who will be as a partner, he has spent a great deal of time in analyzing what we think is a reasonable fee structure. And also, we have a number of questions that we would like to ask you with regarding. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Charles, and we'll jump in as you would like for us to.
We have discussed this among ourselves with Mr. Sutton and Stockton over the last week. As a first step, to try to an outline of perhaps what it was we were going to undertake you all to discuss that. See, do you agree that this is what we're going to undertake? Yes, we would understand that we
on the inside making change, and someone at the light out there threw a cigarette down by the gas, where the gas was running out in the street where the man had overfilled the tank, and that's what started the fire, started to explain it back to the gas truck.
And basically, what did you see?
Well, when I first looked, I seen the fire up on the truck, and so it started getting bad. That's when we started running.
Yeah, that looks good. Okay, drop.
Sprinkle.
Say something.
Sprinkle.
This is going to sound great on radio.
His granddaddy before him, and his great-granddaddy before him, and that's true with most of us. We have in state parks throughout Alabama. I hope our own citizenship will use these parks. We've got inland lakes, we've got the Gulf Coast area, we've got a great diversification of recreational facilities. It's in Alabama. It saves energy, and I urge every citizen, before you decide to go out of the state, take a close look at what we've got right here in Alabama, because you can't beat it anywhere in the world.
Patterson says those who say the state constitution is too old isn't reason enough to have it rewritten. He says a new constitution, as he sees it, would benefit the legislature and municipalities most.
It unshackles the legislature from the restrictions in the present Constitution and gives them an additional tremendous power, taxation and other matters as well. It also gives the municipalities tremendous power, particularly in the field of annexation and taxation. So, who's behind the new Constitution? I think it's clear. Municipalities and the legislature.
Patterson says a governor who believes in separation of powers in state government must have proper and strong leadership in both houses of the state legislature. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.